So yeah, so I just want to talk about it. So I guess for my audience, can you tell me just a little bit about you just for a few minutes and just tell us how you became associate with ProLon and what your role is there?
Absolutely. So my name is Renee, and I'm one of the medical science liaisons here at ProLon. I am originally a dietitian, and I've been working in the field of nutrition for over a decade now, but really digging into the science behind ProLon for about the last 5 years now. Actually, our founder, Dr. Walter Longo, created this product and did 20 plus years of research behind this. And I studied directly with him out of the USC program that he created, and that also continues to support the research behind ProLon. So big fan
Oh, wow.
myself, and also just very involved with the product as much as I can be.
Yeah, that sounds like you have some firsthand experience. That's wonderful. So I
Yes,
have
and I
read
myself have done it as well.
of course, of course. No, I've read the book, The Longevity Diet, and I've been following his work for a while as well. And it's really exciting that he came out with this product. So, just real quick, I mean, the connection between ProLon and L-Nutra, what is that?
So
So,
L-Nutra is the parent company to ProLon. ProLon is kind of our consumer facing audience, but L-Nutra is
okay,
where really like we start digging into a little bit more of the research, some of the more medically focused research as well. We do, of course, have to be careful about ProLon and how we promote it to more medical audience and what we can say
right.
and cannot say. But L-Nutra certainly does continue to do the research in populations like those with type 2 diabetes, multiple sclerosis, even depression. And so L-Nutra continues to do that research. And it's really that body behind ProLon that makes us very science forward.
Okay, that's great. And if I can, I just since you're already on that topic, I know it's also being studied as an adjunct to cancer therapies, various cancer therapies. I mean, maybe not a primary therapy in itself, but it's certainly supporting some of the other things that are happening with cancer patients. So is that accurate? Or I mean, I don't want to
That
get you in
is
trouble with
accurate.
the FDA, but
Yes, yes, don't get me in trouble, but we are conducting research. It is actually a different product. So we take all the research behind ProLon, and we've created something called Zentagen that's used in our cancer trials. So there are some key differences, but a very similar product, and continues to be a fasting mimicking product that we use in those studies. And we've now done several, so we're continuing to do research in that space, and seeing some really exciting results there.
so there has already been some research done in fasting protocols in general, is associated with adjunctive cancer therapy. So you're sort of just
Yes.
following up on that, and the whole idea of the Prolon is to make fasting more accessible and certainly more tolerable to people who otherwise may not be able to stay on the program. So that's
Exactly.
wonderful.
And
Yeah.
it's a safer program as well, because we are giving a little bit of nutrition and nutrients. We're
Yep.
able to show lean muscle mass maintenance, which, as you can imagine, in cancer patients is especially important. So it
Mhm.
is certainly a really amazing opportunity and area for us to be exploring.
Okay, so maybe we can talk a little bit about the you know fasting in general and fasting mimicking diet specifically and how it works
Yeah,
and what it does for our body.
you got
Oh,
it.
you've
You
got the
got it.
visual. Great.
I got the visual. Yeah, we're going to dig in. So fasting in general, I mean, generally when people think about fasting, they think of just you're not eating, you're not drinking anything, you're just really abstaining from food. And that is generally the common definition, but there's a lot more to fasting than that. And we start really digging into the true definitions of fasting when we look at the physiological definition as well as the cellular definition. And that is where we start looking at what type of fuel sources we're using and what sort of nutrient pathways we're triggering in our body. And so it's really what's happening internally that we're focused on here. What does your body think is happening? What is being triggered in your body, and what is being activated? And so that's where we're looking. So we'll talk a little bit more about what's happening and what fuel sources you're burning, and also what nutrient sensing pathways we are specifically avoiding as part of a fasting mimicking program. So,
Great.
uh, I think what a lot of people like to also hear is about the types of fasting that we typically see. So people are very familiar with intermittent fasting, and what we call what is typically just generally bucketed as intermittent fasting is something that we call time restricted eating. And so that is eating, in a 16-8 window or an 18-6 window. You're just shortening the window in which you're consuming food. And other types of fasting that are generally just shorter intermittent fasting protocols are 24-hour fasts, where you're either doing, a 5-2 or fasting 2 days a week, or an alternate day fasting every other week for about 24, 36 or so hours. What we are doing is actually a prolonged periodic fast. And so that is where you're fasting for over 2 days. And it's really important to see the distinction between those shorter intermittent fasting protocols and these longer periodic fasting protocols. Because once you've hit about the 2-day mark, that's where we start seeing a process called autophagy. And that is what results in that cellular rejuvenation. And so this is incredibly important, because that's where we see the healthy aging impact and the longevity impacts that we have seen with ProLon. And the only real way to do that is either with a water fast of over 2 days, or with a fasting mimicking program that we've created. So
can I ask a
really
quick question
exciting.
here? So
please, you can stop me at any time.
So within those 5 days of the fasting mimicking diet, is there also some time restricted eating? In other words, is it suggested or recommended that you sort of limit your window during that day to, like, I don't know, the 8-hour window or something like that? Or is that really not important when you're on this program?
That's a great question. So what we typically recommend is for people to continue what they're currently doing. There is no harm by any means of continuing to do an intermittent fasting time restricted program, but it is not needed in any way, shape, or form. So you can kind of consume them when you wish. And that's the way that we've studied it in all of our programs, is individuals can eat the meal pretty much how they see fit throughout the day. A lot of people do like to extend it throughout the day, because it does feel like you're eating more throughout the day and you're not restricting that window. But other people feel very comfortable fasting and only eating within the 8-hour window, and can certainly continue to do that.
Okay, thank you for answering that.
Of
Please
course.
continue. So, I mean, so you started down the path of autophagy. So
Yes,
this is something that happens on the cellular level. You were talking sort of about the metabolic level versus the cellular. I mean, I don't know what the distinction is there, but I think you were saying on the cellular level, this is where we get the regenerative properties of this program, and sort of the cell. Go ahead. I'm sorry. You talk.
No. No. You're helping me kind of flow through it. So I absolutely love it. So we can absolutely talk about the metabolic component as well, which I am happy to dig into, which is also incredibly important, because we know that there are benefits to having metabolic flexibility and the ability to switch between our fuel sources. But let's dig into the cellular component real quick, because that's what you brought up, yes. Which is how we are able to avoid nutrient sensing pathways. Okay, so why is this important? We have nutrient sensing pathways. They're essentially like radars in our body that alert our body that there is food. And there are 3 that we're primarily focused with, which is mTOR, IGF-1, and pKa. These are typically stimulated by proteins, amino acids, and carbohydrates. And so when those are present in specific amounts of quantities, so they do have to be present in a certain amount for it to raise the alarm, we are then signaling our body to grow.
I'm sorry.
A little bit of both, actually. So we are in a reasonably low quantity, but we also pair our ingredients in a way that essentially time releases it. So in a sense, it is a little bit of both. But
that's important. Yeah. The science
it's very important.
These common. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Very important. And so you hit those, once those types of nutrients are present, those specific nutrient sensing pathways are activated, and they signal our body to grow, because it says there's food here, there's nutrition here, we are ready to grow. And growth is fantastic when you're a child, it's fantastic when you're pregnant, but when you don't need to grow, once you're an adult, once you're good, it can actually just start pushing you down that aging pathway. You're just kind of making your way, unfortunately, closer to your last day. And so growth isn't always as beneficial as we might think it can be. So when we're able to inhibit these pathways, what we're doing is we're essentially telling our body to slow down a little bit, and we're also improving our stress resistance. And so there's lots of benefits that come with that, which we can go into some of those studied benefits in even healthy individuals. But that's the cellular science behind what ProLon does, which is really cool.
Okay. Thank you.
And yeah, absolutely. And so once our body gets into actually a little bit of a stress mode, so our body says we don't have food anymore, we're not getting the nutrient that we're typically used to getting, something is going on, clearly we need to get ready for some rough time. And so what it does is it goes through a process called autophagy. What is autophagy? It's essentially your body eating cells and getting rid of cells that are no longer beneficial or functioning at their peak capacity. So an analogy that we love to use is a big company, they're chugging along, they've hired, millions or several thousands of people, and all of a sudden they go through a recession, or they are not getting the money that they need, and they need to start going, oh shoot, we need to restructure. They start adjusting some of the people that work there. They get rid of the people that aren't doing as much. They start paying people less that aren't doing as much. They fully restructure, and they get rid of people. That's exactly what analogy. Our body does. Yeah, that's exactly what our body does once it starts going through this fast mode. Now, they've gone through this recession. They've only got the best of their employees. And all of a sudden, things start looking up again. They start getting some money. Things are improving. They now start to rebuild, but they're rebuilding with only the best. And so the best of the best are training the best of the best. They have some time to really think about who they're bringing back on board and what they really need. And now the company is stronger than it's ever been, as long as they've gotten through this recession. The recession didn't last too long. And so that's really the same thing. As long as we don't fast for too long, and as long as we're able to replenish the body sufficiently when we're done with the fast, we're able to see some really phenomenal benefits. And so that's kind of the concept of autophagy, just in a
so that's at the cellular level. So now if we kind of zoom out and we want to look at how does this actually in real life help us, benefit us in some tangible ways. This is all going on in a very microscopic level. What does it look like to the? Oh, here we go. Okay, thanks.
Oh, nice I'm segue. Ready for that. Beautiful segue. So how this affects us, in a more tangible way, we see significant weight loss. So in 5 days only, we are able to show 5 pounds of weight loss on average. For some people, that can be much more. But we've seen specifically trunk fat loss. So that's that visceral fat or belly fat, as some people like to call it as well. And so we're really targeting some of those problematic areas that are typically also more associated with chronic disease. Now, we're also able to show.
Can I just clarify? Can I ask you?
Please, yes.
So when you say visceral fat or belly fat, I mean, this is fat that's sort of internal, that sort of surrounds the internal organs. It's not sort of that subcutaneous fat that we feel like our love handles or whatever, the flab. Mm-hmm. This is actually more internal, like inside the abdomen kind of fat.
Mm-hmm. That's right. So the trunk fat, yes, and specifically what we're talking about when we talk about trunk fat is that area around the waist and the abdomen. And so when we're looking, for example, at waist circumference values and those types of measurements that also have been specifically associated with chronic disease, that's that specific area that seems to be especially targeted, which can possibly be part of some of these really amazing benefits that we see for longevity as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. And then another thing to note here is that lean body mass. So we've been able to show with the gold standard of body composition scans, the DEXA scan, that lean body mass is maintained throughout the program. And when we look at other fasting protocols, that isn't always true. And so we're able to do that through a variety of mechanisms and tools that we've incorporated into our program, including the glycerol drink, or the L drink as it's typically known as in our boxes, as well as just providing a little bit of nutrition and calories, a little bit of protein as well as part of the program. So all of that likely plays into the fact that lean body mass is maintained, not to mention because we are stressing the body as part of a fast, we also see increases in growth hormone. And that growth hormone seems to be very protective of our lean body mass as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems to be a common thing in most weight loss programs. And when people do lose weight, they lose fat, but they also lose some muscle mass in the process. So it's important to maintain that to the degree that it's possible.
Absolutely. And we know also that lean body mass and maintaining that lean body mass ensures that your metabolism stays high as well, and you're not just losing weight and actually dropping too much your metabolic rate. So there's a lot of opportunity here in maintaining that lean muscle mass. So it supports in maintaining the results and maintaining the weight loss, which we've actually been able to show even after you complete your 3 cycles. You go back to your regular diet, you don't do a single thing, you're able to maintain many of the impacts that you see after you complete the fast. So that's pretty phenomenal. This isn't even saying, oh, now you've got to go back to a very healthy, intermittent fasting protocol with Mediterranean diet, with blah, blah. We're not making any recommendations. We're just saying go back to how you typically eat, and we still see improvements sustained. So
you should
really
go back
cool.
to a Mediterranean diet or a healthy diet, or Dr. Longo's longevity diet, which is basically a Mediterranean diet, correct? Is that, it's really close.
It basically is. It's very close. He does promote a low protein, plant-based protein diet. And he also does promote circadian patterns of eating. And so that is eating essentially when the sun is up and stopping eating when the sun goes down. But generally speaking, it's very...
I'm sorry, there's a little delay. I keep interrupting. There's a little delay in the
No,
in the
you're
stream,
completely fine.
My question was, so the circadian, in trying to align your body or your eating habits with circadian rhythms, does this mean it should be adjusted seasonally, especially people who live in more northern, or southern longitude or latitudes rather, so they're going to have really long days in the summer, really short days in the winter. Should people like that adjust to that, or is that not?
I'm to be completely honest with you, I'm not super familiar with the adjustments that are seasonal, but it also, circadian patterns, as far as I know, also are very unique to the individual, and can be adjusted that way. We all become more and more familiar with our chronotypes as we wear these Oura rings and these tools that help us understand ourselves. Right. So I personally believe, just this is a personal opinion and not so much Longos or ProLons, but that it is very unique and should be adjusted based off of how your body typically reacts to essentially your own unique circadian needs and your unique and also, chronotype.
I know that in some of the Mediterranean countries, for example, in northern Spain or, places like that, they have very long days in the summer, very short days in winter, and they do they kind of eat when the sun goes down. So in the summer they eat at 11 o'clock at night, but in the winter they might eat at 8 o'clock or something. So, so yeah, exactly. I think that's part of sort of that lifestyle.
Absolutely, and it just kind of goes back to the way that we lived, way back when we really had to live when the sun was up and kind of go to bed when the sun was down, because you didn't
another question
have too
about
much
that
light.
In a minute. I have another question about that in a minute. Once we get to, I guess we're going to talk about ketosis eventually, or is that something that we're going to touch on?
Yeah, we can absolutely talk about ketosis. I'm happy to talk about ketosis. Let's do that, because I know we only have a few more minutes. We can always, by the way, schedule some additional time. I just unfortunately do have a call afterwards. But I want to talk about that real quick because you brought it up. So Let's talk about the phases of fasting really quickly. ProLon stays within the general fasting physiology. So we see there's about 3 phases. The first phase is within the first approximate 24 hours. The second phase is 24-hour to can go anywhere from about 7 days to 24 days. And then the third phase is beyond that point. So beyond the 7 to 24 days, depending on the person, depending on what's going on. So the first phase is where we start seeing that depletion in glycogen and the gradual increase in ketones, or in this case, it's that purple line, the beta hydroxybutyrate line. So as our glycogen starts depleting, we start losing our stored glucose, we start to look for other sources. And that is when our body starts taking our fatty acids and it starts utilizing those, as well as taking those fatty acids and converting them to ketones. And our body starts going into ketosis. And so that starts increasing over time and continues to increase once our glycogen is fully depleted after, that can happen around the 12-hour mark or so. And it does vary from person to person, depending on what's going on, how much you're exercising, etc. But these are approximate timing. So then at the 24-hour mark, now we're pretty fully depleted on our glucose, and we're truly relying on our ketones and fatty acids. And we also start using protein. See, that red line is where we start kind of increasing our protein use, and that does continue to increase. We try and spare protein as much as possible during this time because protein is incredibly important. It's, of course, important to our muscles, to our organs. We want to maintain that. Now, that is when around day 7 for some people, around day 24 for others, it depends. And everybody is going to be different, but there can be now some detriments to fasting. And this is where you start seeing muscle wasting. You can see the protein utilization goes up. You can see, we're running out of ketones, we're running out of fatty acids to use. It decreases significantly. And this is where we start seeing, that mass specific weight loss, which is where we start really impacting our organ function and health. So we don't want to get there. And that's really why ProLon is a 5-day program, because we don't want to start touching into this opportunity for it to be detrimental. We really only want to get the benefits. We really only want to get you shifted into ketosis, give your body the opportunity to shift fuel sources, give your body the opportunity to use ketones for fuel, and then resume back to a regular eating pattern before you start getting into the downsides. So that's a little bit about that. I can go into, go
so
ahead.
I do have a quick
I'm going to let you ask a question. Yeah, please.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Yeah, okay, I'm glad you have this slide up, because my question is this: when you hear some of these fad diets, like the caveman diet or the paleo diet or whatever, I mean, they're sort of the opposite of the fasting mimicking diet, in the sense that they're promoting a lot of animal fat, a lot of animal protein, less, so that the goal there is, of course, the same, to get your body into ketosis. And I'm just I'm just curious if you could explain sort of that, the way that those two things are similar, but yet obviously they diverge, significantly in what they're recommending. But
absolutely. So the big difference that I like to speak to when we talk about the difference between the ketogenic diet and the fasting mimicking or fasting diets is that we are significantly lower typically in saturated fat. And we also are much lower often in protein. So the ketogenic diet, depending on how they do it, is quite protein dependent. And also often has a lot of saturated fat from those animal proteins, which we know to have a typically negative impact on health. Now, protein also, specifically, as I mentioned, if we jump back to our pathways, does trigger our growth pathways, because protein impacts IGF-1 and mTOR. And so we are activating those nutrient sensing pathways. And so you are not going to get into autophagy. You are not going to get into cellular rejuvenation, and you're not going to get the healthy aging and longevity impact that you would see with fasting.
Even if you get some of the weight loss and other benefits, you're not going to get those rejuvenation effects.
Exactly, exactly. And so, I always like to, give props where props are due, which is we are seeing the shift in fuel source, although oftentimes people who are ketogenic stay on ketogenic and they're not transitioning in and out. So they're not seeing a huge shift in their fuel sources or that metabolic flexibility, but that you are seeing that transition there. But otherwise, also, there's not really a caloric deficit that is required, so you're not seeing that as well. So there's a lot of things that don't happen, but there are some things that do. So you know
Okay.
that's
Thank
the
you. Well,
big
listen, I
difference.
mean, if you have anything else you can impart on my audience, that would be wonderful regarding the benefits that I know you're on a time crunch. I mean, I'm still okay, but wrap it up however you feel you have for the amount of time.
Yeah, no, I think what's valuable to note is a couple of things. So one is how we typically suggest that we run through these protocols. So you mentioned you've done 3 cycles yourself. That is how we've studied it as well. We suggest that people do 3 cycles in a row. You're doing 5 days on, 25 days off, 5 days on, 25 days off, 5 days on, 25 days off. Once you've done those first 3, if you've been able to reach your goal, then fantastic, you can go on to a maintenance protocol. If you haven't reached your goal, you can certainly continue to add cycles on a monthly basis. But at that point, we do want you to reassess, maybe speak to a healthcare professional, make sure that you're in a good state to continue doing fasting protocols for a longer period of time. But many of ProLon users will continue to go until they've reached perhaps their desired weight loss or their desired change in maybe blood pressure or whatever reason they're choosing to move forward with this. Now, once you have reached your goal, you can move on to our maintenance protocol, which we typically suggest that you're doing 3 to 4 times a year, so every 3 to 4 months. And just continue along that way. And there's a lot of opportunity there. And it's just kind of topping up on that base that you've created for yourself and making sure that you're staying on top of those healthy aging benefits. Another thing that I will quickly note is I don't think I dove into some of those other opportunities, which is improvements in IGF-1, which is where we're able to see those improvements in healthy aging, as well as significant impact on systolic blood pressure, which is also really fantastic. So lots of opportunity with our program as seen in our clinical studies. And we have 18 plus published clinical studies that we have available. Even you can just go find them on the L-Nutra website and dig into those, and you can dig into a little bit more of the science. And if you ever want to chat more about any of those specific studies, I'm happy to dig into those as well. Otherwise, I would say, take a peek at some of our other offerings. We have, this guy's the one I wanted to show.
No, that's a good,
Beyond our 5-day
tell us about that. Because the 5-day
Yeah.
program is the core product, but recently you've come out with some new ones. So if you could just quickly review those, that would be great. And the uses of them, the practical uses of them.
Beautiful. Yes, absolutely. So let's talk really quickly about the reset. So the reset is a 1-day, 24-hour fast. It essentially is the first day of the 5-day, just utilized on a single day purpose. So for individuals who do like to do their 5-2 or their alternate day programs, this can be a really great addition. Or if you just are looking for a quick reset, maybe after a period of indulgence, maybe after the holidays, you just want one quick 1-day reset. It is significantly calorie reduced. So you are seeing about 1,100 calories a day. So it can just be beneficial for that as well. And you are going to still see that shift towards ketosis as well. And so you're seeing that metabolic flexibility being able to be shown here. What you will not see is autophagy or cellular rejuvenation, because as we mentioned, that typically happens around day 3. So you do need to do the full 5 days. It's still ProLon reset with ProLon 5-day intermittently as well. So that's our reset. I'll talk a little bit about the Fast Bar and the Fast Shake, which are really phenomenal products. We actually just conducted a clinical study on the Fast Bar itself, which showed that there were maintenance in ketones and glucose compared to water fasting at 15 hours. So people who were put in the trial, there were about 100 people that went through this. They fasted for 15 hours with just water, and half the group kept drinking water and the other half of the group had a fast bar. And they showed those same changes in ketones and water, or no change essentially in ketones and water, or in glucose.
That's amazing.
So essentially this keeps you in a fast and you can still have food, which is really phenomenal for people who are looking to do those intermittent fasting protocols, but might get hungry at some point. Or, you know, you're really good at 16-8, but you want to get to 18-6. And you can't quite get there without something. So this will allow you to extend that window. And so lots of opportunity there with both the fast bar and the fast shake. The fast shake is just a shake repurposed version of the fast bar in essence.
Okay.
So yeah.
So
really,
they're
really
composed
cool
of basically the same ingredients. I mean, they're just
yeah.
What and I mean, I don't know if this is even relevant, but what are in general, just so people can compare to other programs. I mean, I just get this question once in a while, and I don't even know if it's relevant or how to answer it. But people ask, what are the macros on the ProLon program relative to some of the other regimes? So, I think maybe you did go over that already. Yeah.
No,
Okay,
I did not.
perfect.
It's a good
Yeah.
question. So the ProLon program is relatively low protein, at about 10% protein. It is all plant-based protein. The whole program is plant-based. The only non-vegan ingredient that we have is honey. So really plant forward. We use we have 45% approximately fats. And so that is primarily coming from, again, plant sources. We use a lot, we're very nut forward. So there is a lot of those monounsaturated fatty acids coming in from there, and omega-3 fatty acids also from our supplements that we include, which are our algal oil supplement. We also have about 45% complex carbohydrates, and that is our breakdown.
So, I mean, that would be a pretty good general guideline for a regular diet in general, would you say? I mean, obviously you're going to have a lot more calories and there's going to be more diversity, but as far as these macros go, would that be a pretty good just benchmark? I mean, just to sort of loosely follow.
Yeah, I would say that this is quite similar to the longevity diet macro breakdown, in that it promotes protein restriction and is high in healthy fats and complex carbohydrates. So, yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for answering all my questions and doing such a thorough job of going beyond what I was asking to really dig into the science and to break it down for lay people and understand, you know, how this works. And, you know, it just, I mean, bottom line, it sort of is exactly what it's called. It's a fasting mimicking diet. You get all the benefits of fasting while still not starving, feeling hungry all the time. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's what we're here for. We're here to make fasting easy, safe, and quite enjoyable. So I'm really glad that we had the opportunity to chat, and I'm here to answer any more questions along the way if you ever need me.
Thank you so much, Renee. All right. Have a great day.
You too. Talk soon, Rick.
All right. Ciao.